All right, folks, buckle up because this is going to be a long one, but an important one. All right, the reason this is going to be a long video is because I need to explain what reconciliation is and what exactly is in it and why it's bad and too expensive. I also want you to understand that the infrastructure package is separate from the reconciliation bill. Now, I'm still against the infrastructure package, but that doesn't mean everything in it is bad. It just means it's about 3 times too expensive for my liking, and we don't need to be spending that kind of money. But keep in mind, for the sake of this discussion, these are 2 separate items. So what's in this reconciliation package? Why is it too expensive? And why is it so bad for America? So like most things that Bernie Sanders does, they're bad. And guess what? He wrote this bill too. So it's massive increase in spending and massive increase in taxes. Okay? Both things are bad. Let's just go over some of the basics. $4.3 trillion in new spending. $2.1 trillion in new taxes. This increases yearly governmental spending by over 73% every year for the next 10 years. Putting it together, this is the most expensive bill that's ever been considered by Congress. Now, if the spending isn't bad enough, the policy is even worse. On a fundamental level, it kills jobs. The bill imposes $2.1 trillion in tax hikes, which is the largest increase in history. It imposes a 26.5% corporate rate, the second highest rate in the world. Common sense and basic economics tell us this is going to drive out millions of jobs. And for the jobs that we don't lose, this kind of tax increase will reduce wages by an estimated 1.1%. And that's on top of the fact that real wages have already suffered as a result of inflation, and this bill is just going to depress them even further. Well, Dan, Democrats say they're just going to tax the rich, and that's how they're going to pay for this. Well, it turns out even liberal-leaning think tanks estimate that about 2/3 of these tax increases will be borne by lower and middle income class. And this is bad for business growth, this is bad for investment. See, by raising the top individual tax rate to 39%, many small businesses that are organized as pass-throughs or sole proprietorships, they're just going to close their doors as soon as they're about to open. And if you care about your electricity prices and energy prices in general, well, this isn't good news for you because there's going to be a tax on natural gas consumption, which would be the final nail in the coffin on the American energy sector. This could destroy about 90,000 jobs, according to most estimates, and increase energy costs per family by about $242 per year. But don't worry. A lot of the money being spent, about $80 billion, is just going straight to the IRS so they can double the amount of agents out there looking for you. And let's not forget the Green New Deal. Lucky for all you Green New Dealers out there, there's about $630 billion for Green New Deal subsidies. They look something like this. $7.5 billion to create a civilian climate corps, which is basically just a bunch of activists to promote Green New Deal stuff. Another $5 billion in environmental justice tax credit for universities to support climate change studies. So that's just the government bankrolling liberal propaganda in our universities. Oh, and here we go, $27 billion to set up a National Climate Bank slush fund. This National Climate Bank is especially infuriating because Wall Street is already bankrolling green projects all over the place. In fact, there's probably a bubble brewing there. You don't need another $27 billion of taxpayer money to do it. Oh, and get this, if you're a family making up to $800,000 a year, you're eligible for an electric vehicle subsidy for up to $12,500. Really sticking it to the rich, huh, Democrats? And you know who this is intended for, right? It's elites on the coast that love their electric vehicles and want to be subsidized for buying them. And don't forget, they're also the same ones that donate to Democrat campaigns. It's not just energy and economics that's in this bill, it also affects your health care. And again, Bernie Sanders wrote it. One of the most egregious things in this bill is H.R. 3, which is the Democrats' drug pricing scheme. This is such bad policy that even Democrats had to vote against it in our Energy and Commerce Committee. And yet Nancy Pelosi still stuck it in the final versions. What does this do? Well, they call it a negotiation, right? Which is fine. That would be good if that's what it was, except it's not. It's a hostage taking, where the government says, if you don't take the price that we want to give you, well, we're going to tax your revenue 95%. The problem here is that there will be no more innovation. There will be no more new drugs. The CBO estimates that there'll be about 30 less new cures over the next couple decades. Other organizations estimate far worse than that. So look, you can't control the price of a drug if the drug doesn't exist in the first place. And that's what this bill would do, prevent drugs from existing in the first place. This bill also spends about $300 billion more expanding Medicare, especially for things like dental, vision, hearing. And by the way, 95% of Medicare beneficiaries already have those benefits because of Medicare Advantage, which is a Republican idea, by the way. But they just want to spend more money on it. And by the way, Medicare is already insolvent. You can't just keep adding more taxpayer money to it without reforming the program. And of course, like good Democrats, they added mandates in there to make sure that you have to pay for abortion coverage too. So now your tax dollars are paying for abortion coverage. Now that's all not enough for you. The Democrats also tried to sneak in amnesty for illegal immigrants into this bill. They wanted to spend $100 billion for amnesty for about 8 million immigrants. Luckily, because this is passed through reconciliation, the Senate parliamentarian struck this from the bill because it's against the rule. All right, bottom line, this is a lot of spending, a lot of taxes, and a lot of overall bad policy. It's really unclear how this would really help Americans. It's clearly an attempt at bribing you, and then they lie to you about it. So Joe Biden recently says that, well, it's free, it costs $0. Okay, first of all, it's not paid for by the tax increases. It's about double what the tax increases are. But hey, by the way, even if it was, it doesn't make something free. Okay, if I go buy a cup of coffee and pay for it, it doesn't mean the cup of coffee that I get in return is now free. It cost me something, just like this costs you something. More importantly, this is costing your kids and grandkids something because they have to somehow pay off this debt. The last thing Americans need right now is runaway debt. We spent a lot of money because of COVID, a lot of agreement on spending that money. It was necessary. But now it's time to rein it in. People want to go back to work. People want to open up their businesses. So what can you do to stop this monstrosity of a bill? Well, you can call your Democrat representatives. They're barely hanging on here. They need every single vote. And if you call your Democrat representatives and you let them know what you're against and why you're against it, and you can list all the things that I've been talking about, this may fail, and we may get a much more reasonable bill on our hands.